The Nashville Predators hit the ice today for the first practice of training camp, and it looks like we will see Phil Tomasino in gold there. We're going to tell you about Tomo's new deal and talk about what we're looking for from a few new Preds on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this first day of practice on the ice Thursday episode with a shout out to new listeners, to our everydayers, and of course a special shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders. We appreciate your support. We love that we get to spend a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lincoln, and I'm the Nashville Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
The Phil Tomasino saga is over, at least for another season. Yesterday, Nashville announced that they have signed Phil Tomasino to a one-year deal. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the details of that deal, how surprised we are or are not that Phil Tomasino is back in gold. We're going to tell you what we want to see from him in training camp, and also what we're looking for in training camp and preseason from some of the newer Preds as well. Before we dive into all of that, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, I really was hoping that we would come back with some earth-shattering new posts about the Nashville Zoo calendar and the Nashville Predators. Instead, we have to kick off this episode with straight hockey talk and some news. Phil Tomasino has signed a one-year deal with the Nashville Predators. Just off the top, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think my initial thought is we're cutting it a little close there, Barry.
What are you doing to us?
Right down to the wire. My initial thoughts, perhaps because I'm cynical. I'm at an emotional porcupine or skunk or some kind of combination. Yeah. My initial thought, quite frankly, is that the reason it took so long is because, and this is just informed speculation. It's not reporting. It's just informed speculation that Barry Trotz and the Predators were exploring options to trade Tomasino. And that's why it took so long to get the deal done. Because, I mean, yes, they could still trade him now, theoretically, but it's easier to trade a player's rights than it is to trade a player who is signed to a contract. I think given his struggles, his inconsistency, especially last year, I think that they probably weren't thrilled at the prospect of signing him to a one-way deal in which he gets paid the same amount, whether he's in Nashville or Milwaukee. But I think that, it does make sense at this point. And it's just kind of the ultimate, I feel like last year we said, oh, this is a prove it year for Tomasino, but now it really is.
Yeah, there is no question that Phil Tomasino has this season to convince Andrew Brunette that he is an important piece for the Predators moving forward. I'm with you. The longer this went on, and really there was not a lot of rumor, whisper about anything happening as far as getting it done. And it made you come away from this thinking, what is Nashville looking to do? Are they? And I'm with you. I think informed speculation says Nashville may have been talking about it. I don't know how I feel about that, because, and I said this yesterday on the episode, and I said it kind of flippantly. And so I want to clarify what I meant. I said Andrew Brunette, I feel like he has trust issues. I'm not saying in his personal life. Like, I want to be clear. Like, I don't know how Andrew Brunette, man. I don't know if he is an emotional skunk or porcupine or what. I don't know. But when it comes to the players, it feels like there are a number of players who were on a very short leash, and he used words that made it seem like he didn't trust these players to be on the ice in the big moments. And Phil Tomasino was one of those. And so for me, when you see, okay, this is a 1-year deal, this is it. Like Phil Tomasino, you are either playing to be a part of the future of the Nashville Predators, or you are playing for an opportunity to join another team somewhere. And to be honest with you, I don't know whether Phil Tomasino feels compelled to fight for a spot in Nashville at this point, or if, he's going to put in a good year and maybe look elsewhere as well, because this is Tomasino's time with, in the NHL. It has been soap opera-ish with 2 different head coaches, with 2 different general managers. And I wonder if, you have said before, we've talked about before, sometimes players need a fresh start. And Phil Tomasino was one of those ones that we were like, I don't know. So he's not getting a fresh start somewhere else. He is getting a year here in Nashville. I think a huge question is, what is he going to do with it? And there's a part of me that's like, is there anything he can do with it to convince Andrew Brunette that he is a long-term piece for this team? I don't know.
I mean, I have gone on record as saying this in the past, and it is nothing against Phil. I love the kid. I really
Oh,
want
yeah.
to see him succeed. And this is actually, so I say this because I want to see him succeed. I have been on team trade him since last year. I think that is the only way, kind of the same with Cody Glass, as much as I hated to admit it, kind of the only way for him to really get a fresh start, really get a clean slate with a new organization. And to be quite honest with you, I still think that his future is best spent with a different organization. Now, that said, if I'm Phil, I'm looking at this year coming up, and I'm treating this as my audition for
Exactly.
Barry Trotz, but for other teams who are going to be looking to add a young forward. Maybe potentially a rebuilding team, like someone, maybe someone who's on a different kind of timeline. Again, I'm not saying treat this season as a wash and it's all lost and there's no way that he becomes a long-term piece. There's certainly, a possibility of that, but I just, with everything that I've seen from him and from the rest of this organization, I think that I would treat this year as an audition for him, not for a long-term role in Nashville, but for a long-term role somewhere else.
I agree with that. And I think that there were a lot of hard words said at the end of the season about Phil Tomasino from Andrew Brunette. And I don't necessarily feel like Andrew Brunette was overly critical, but I think that he was extremely blunt about Phil Tomasino. And so I am with you. You look at this year and it's like, okay, Phil Tomasino, you have a lot that you're going to need to show on a team where there are not very many openings in the roster, and B, where maybe you're going to have to dig out of a little hole or change a misperception about yourself with the head coach, which is an uphill battle. And so I'm with you. This may not be a sign that there is a long-term relationship between Tomasino and the Nashville Predators. You hate to see it. First round draft pick. You hate to see it. And again, we've got to see what unfolds in training camp. We've got to see what unfolds in the season. I come back to, as I look at just the practicality of Tomo being back, I come back to, this is somebody who has really good chemistry with Michael McCarron. And look, if we are going to talk about chemistry with Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos from back when Hiroki Goisek was nothing but a glimmer in his parents' eye, then I think we have to talk about the fact that there is some past chemistry with Tomasino and McCarron. And we know with Kiefer Sherwood gone, there is an opportunity on that fourth line if they keep that Smith-McCarron duo together for somebody. it feels like it's Juuso Parsonen's to lose, but I think Tomasino keeps it interesting. I think Tomasino's definitely going to keep Juuso Parsonen honest, fighting for a spot. But I'm with you. I don't think that this contract is the end of the saga. And I think if I'm Phil Tomasino, I am very focused on my game and what I can prove to whoever may be watching.
Yeah, I think, and you look at it now with Tomasino signed, the Predators now have 22 players under contract heading into camp. The max for an NHL active roster is 23. So they can technically add another player. But so at this point, we're not talking about who gets a spot on the roster per se. We're more so talking about who gets the starting spot because, of if these guys, if we're just going to operate under the assumption that Tomasino is going to start the year on the NHL roster as he did last year, along with Parsonen, obviously, since he's also on a one-way deal, you're now not talking about who gets a spot on the roster, it's who gets the starting spot and who's going to be the extra forward. And that, like you said, makes things a little more interesting.
Yeah, it's going to keep things very spicy. It is something to be watching in training camp. Again, I don't think we're going to come out of training camp knowing exactly how Andrew Brunette is going to be rolling out lines in December. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, but we're going to need to watch that trial and error when it comes to Phil Tomasino, when it comes to Juuso Parsonen, further down perhaps in the lineup than what we've been talking about. Coming up, we do want to talk about some of those players who may be rotating different spots at the top of the lineup, some new faces at training camp. Let's talk about what we want to see from Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shay, and Scott Wedgewood. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we've got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Emma, we have talked about Steven Stamkos. We've talked about some depth players. What do we want to see from them? But let's talk about the players that I feel like have a little bit of middle child syndrome, because when Steven Stamkos joins your team, you tend to forget that you have just added Jonathan Marchessault. And under normal circumstances, if a team had not gotten Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault would be the topic, but he's a little bit the middle child right now. So we're looking to see what he is going to bring to the roster. Of course, Marchessault, 33 years old. I think it's interesting. The average age of those 4 big additions of Stamkos, Marchessault, Shay, and Wedgewood, 32 years, 3 months. But age is not a disease. Let's come back to that. Marchessault played all 82 games of the regular season last season in Vegas. Of course, 42 goals, 69 points. That was a career high in goals and points. He was the Conn Smythe winner in 2023 when Vegas won the Cup. And this was a free agency big fish. Overshadowed again a little bit by the Stamkos signing, but I don't think that has anything to do with skill or talent or what he is going to bring to the lineup. I think maybe it just has more to do with how huge the storyline was, not just that Nashville was getting Stamkos, but that Stamkos was not staying in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this back on July 1st when it was like, wait, we got both of them? Like it would have been a big deal to get just one of those guys, but Nashville got both of them. And so I think, yes, obviously there's been a lot more kind of media fanfare around Stamkos. Obviously spent his entire career with the same organization, was a captain there, just different circumstances. So you can understand it a little bit. But Jonathan Marchessault is one of those guys that I think could handle the middle child role very well. And now, as I say this, I'm wondering if he actually is a middle child. I might need to look into this. But I think that he is a guy who's got a chip on his shoulder. We saw that during his introductory media availability. He did not hold his punches talking about Vegas and the way things went down there, and how he didn't feel that they really went above and beyond to try to keep him. So there's that. He was one of the original misfits, in Vegas. And so all of those guys kind of had just this perennial chip on their shoulder about like, well, our old teams didn't want us. And so now we're going to make a new team and we're going to win a Stanley Cup. And so I think that I agree with you. I think that the signing has started, as time has gone on, the signing has been overshadowed by Stamkos. But I think that if anyone could handle that, it would be Jonathan Marchessault.
Mm-hmm. I do actually love that he is coming in with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, because I think great player, give him a little bit of an attitude, and it's going to be fun to unleash Jonathan Marchessault in a gold jersey. There is so much to like about him. And here is what I will say. He reminds me so much in some ways of Ryan O'Reilly, in that he is good at almost everything. And if you look just strictly on what he brings offensively, this is somebody who can score on the power play. He's great at 2-on-1 opportunities. He also is great at taking out the trash. He is good at cleaning up those goals. And as you watch him play, especially from last year, and remember last year at 32 years old, career year, he has a little bit of that high-end shot that we see in Philip Forsberg. He definitely has these moments of Roman Yossi's next level, holy crap moves. He's got that finish to him, and he's got that reliability and the willingness to just score whatever kind of goal he can, like Ryan O'Reilly has. And last year, Nashville, when that top line of like Forsberg, Nyquist, and O'Reilly, when they weren't on the ice, you didn't know what you were going to get offensively. And I think when you put Jonathan Marchessault out there, regardless of what line, regardless of line mates, it is going to be that feeling of anything could happen offensively. And that's huge.
And I would add to all the things that you just said, he's got a little bit of Yossi, a little bit of O'Reilly, a little bit of Forsberg. I would say he's also got the edge and the spice maybe of like a Kiefer Sherwood, Jason Zucker type. He's not afraid to get in there and mix things up. He's a spicy guy. Like he plays with some fire. And I think that this whole chip on his shoulder is really just going to add to that.
Yeah, I am here for that. One of the things that I have heard people say, talking about, he had these 42 goals last season, and people are like, yeah, but a lot of them were empty net goals. Let me just tell you a couple things about that. I've got feelings. Number one, an empty net goal is worth as many points as a goal where there's a goaltender in there, because you are trying to get the puck from some team that's got an extra skater out there. The other thing that you have to realize when you see somebody like Marchessault, who has, a number of empty net goals, is this is a player that the coach wants out there in a high pressure, close game situation at the end. Bruno having trust issues. He's not going to have trust issues with Jonathan Marchessault. When you saw Nashville lose in that December 23rd game to the Dallas Stars in the last 13 seconds of the game, you want to know going forward that there is somebody like Jonathan Marchessault out there who you can trust in that high pressure situation, who's not going to get caught looking at the puck, who's not going to get caught, relaxed thinking, we're going to take it to overtime. So I think that there is on ice skill. I think, of course, there is leadership, serial winner, and all that stuff. But I think that this is such a well-rounded addition that maybe fans in Nashville, because of the shining nimbus of Steven Stamkos, they're missing what Marchessault can bring. And I think we're going to see it early and often in training camp with him.
Yeah, he does bring a little bit of everything, I think. And that's what kind of makes him a little bit more, I know that even here have spent a lot of time kind of questioning, well, where is Steven Stamkos going to play? I would like to know as well, where is Marchessault going to play? Because he is one of those guys that does so many things so well. As far as 5-on-5 on special teams, he's not exactly, I wouldn't call him a prolific power play scorer, but he can certainly bring a lot to the power play, help create space for the Stamkoses and the Forsbergs and the O'Reillys and the guys who actually do score on the power play. And I think that he can bring a lot there. So I'm more interested to see where he ends up at 5-on-5.
Yeah, it's going to be great to watch. And again, he's hitting the ice today at Ford Ice Center, Bellevue, in a Nashville Predators jersey. It's going to be a sight to behold. Coming up, we're going to talk about the new addition that is probably the most overlooked and underdiscussed this offseason. We're going to tell you why Brady Shay could potentially be one of the best things to happen to Nashville this offseason. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If all of this hockey talk has you thinking about getting to an NHL game, or if you're looking to make some fall memories at a concert, a play, or a comedy show, you have got to check out Gametime. Gametime makes buying tickets to your favorite sports, music, theater, or comedy quick and easy. They have this great new feature. It's called Gametime Picks, and it filters out all the fluff. And you're going to only see incredible deals on great seats. So you're not going to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets for your event. Gametime also gives you a view from your seat. And when you switch on the all-in pricing feature before you buy, you're going to know exactly what you're getting before you hit the checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your order. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Emma, we've talked about, Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, these great big new additions. And I have to confess that on yesterday's episode, I left out Brady Shay when we were talking about off-season things. Forgive me, Silver Fox. Because Brady Shay, I think, could sneakily become one of the better things to happen to Nashville this season. You said something to me early on after they had, signed him. And you said, and I thought this was bold, but the more you talked, the more I was like, I am buying what Emma is selling. You said that there is an argument to be made that not only is Brady Shay a fair replacement for McDonough, you kind of see him as an upgrade. Bold
I
take.
do. I stand by that as well. I think, he's younger. I know people, before anyone comes at me about the length of the contract, that is the length that you have to offer in order to get a player of that caliber.
That's the price of doing business, baby.
He's 30 years old, which again, not old people. Yes, by the time he's at the end of that contract, are you going to be getting peak Brady Shay? No, but you're going to be getting peak Brady Shay right now. So that's what you have to pay to get it. And I think the thing with Shay, he's younger than McDonough.
Mm-hmm. He's
got the size. He is responsible in his own zone. He has a little bit of offensive upside too. He had a couple shorthanded goals last year for Carolina. I think the biggest thing the biggest area where you're going to notice Brady Shay when he joins the Predators this year is on the penalty kill. He's going to be the big addition there. Barry Trotz has already talked about, we want guys to have specialized roles on special teams. We don't want any more guys, pulling double duty on the power play and penalty kill if we don't have to. So he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be huge for the penalty kill. I think he was one of the Hurricanes' top penalty killers last year. I want to say he averaged more than 2 minutes per game on the penalty kill with Carolina. Carolina just happened to finish with the best penalty kill in the NHL last year. 86, I think 86.4%, something like that. So like they had the best kill in the league. Brady Shay, obviously a big part of that. And then, you factor in the fact that obviously assistant coach Dan Hinote's gone, Darby Hendrickson's in. It's, reason to believe that he's going to be the one taking over most of the penalty kill responsibilities. And so we're probably going to see it sort of a new look on the penalty kill. And I would imagine that a lot of it is probably going to be shaped and designed around Brady Shay, because that is how impactful he can be in that role.
Yeah. And that special teams conversation right there, Emma, is part of the overlooking Brady Shay, because when you look at the offseason moves by Nashville and you say, well, let's think about what that does for special teams, you immediately go to Steven Stamkos on the power play. And let's be real, Steven Stamkos on the power play is going to be huge for Nashville. Jonathan Marchessault as an addition, going to be big for Nashville. It also is going to give that second penalty or the second power play unit an opportunity to kind of get some more skill and talent on there. But that overshadows exactly what you're talking about. And that is the penalty kill with somebody who specializes in that as well as Brady Shay does. So I am with you. That's just another reason I think why we accidentally overlook him. I don't imagine that Brady Shay is going to be overlooked for long. I do think one of the things we're going to be watching for in training camp, in preseason, is where he is going to land as far as a defensive pairing. I think we talk so much about the offensive lines, again, overshadowing. There's a lot of discussion that could happen over what are you going to do with the defensive pairings now that you're throwing in a Brady Shay. And there's this roster spot where is it going to be like Luke Shen? Is it going to be Spencer Stasny? Is it Mark Del Gaizo's turn? So I think in training camp, got to keep your eye on the defensive pairings, got to keep your eye on Brady Shay. I do want to say just real quick, talking about Scott Wedgewood and what do we want to see from him in training camp? Honest to Pete, Emma, this is what I come up with. Scott Wedgewood, all you have to do is come into training camp and look better than what people imagined Yaroslav Askarov was going to look like. Like, that's all you got to do, buddy. And I feel pretty confident he's going to be okay. Like, I feel like he's going to come in and show everybody this is what a backup goaltender has to do with consistency.
And I think, yes, the on ice piece, of course, extremely important. But I also just want to, shout out Scott Wedgewood for all of the contacts, friends, colleagues I have around the league who have covered all of these players, whether it's Brady Shay, Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, who, have reached out or I have reached out to after the signings to kind of get a sense of who these guys are and, just how they are to work with. I have been inundated with people telling me how amazing Scott Wedgewood is and how much I'm going to like him and how much the players are going to like him. I think he's going to be so important for that locker room. And that's not something that you necessarily see on the ice, obviously. And it's something that I look forward to exploring and kind of watching that unfold, because I have had, coaches, players, reporters, analytics people, like all like people who have worked with Scott Wedgewood reaching out to me without even me asking. They're coming to me saying Scott Wedgewood is incredible. Great locker room guy. He helps, everyone loves him. He will help anyone, anyone who wants to stay out on the ice a little bit longer to work on their skills or whatever. He will be right there with them, and I think that that's going to be huge. There's also a lot to be said for the fact that he is not competing for a starting role.
Mm-hmm.
But he is capable of playing one, if needed. Obviously, we don't want that to happen, because if that happens, that probably means UC Saros is injured. But it's not the ultimate goal, but it's something that he can do. He did it last year with Jake Ottinger when he was hurt. And so he can do it. I think he went 6-3-2, like very respectable during that time. And so I think that he was a safe choice. I know, maybe the Yaroslav Askarov was more exciting, more fun, more
The
flashy.
glamorous choice.
Yes. Scott Wedgewood is the safe choice. And quite frankly, when you're trying to compete for a Stanley Cup, you want the safe choice in this position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a tough one for me, Emma, emotionally, because huge fan of Kevin Lankinen.
As am I. We are still locked on Kevin Lankinen.
We are locked on Kevin Lankinen. Kevin Lankinen, whenever you kick off your life coaching business, like right here, like we're signing up for that.
Lord knows we could use some life coaching too.
Talk us out of being emotional porcupines and emotional skunks, please, Kevin Lankinen. Talk us out of this. But I agree with you. I just think Scott Wedgewood is bringing maturity. He's bringing experience. He's bringing professionalism. And I really feel like it's going to be great to watch that relationship between he and UC Saros, and to watch how the team utilizes somebody like Scott Wedgewood in a season where the Predators, they're in it for real, y'all. Like, they're not messing around this season. It may not happen this season, but they are going to compete like it is. So a lot to like, a ton to be watching for. Again, training camp kicking off this morning. Ford Ice Center, Bellevue. Emma and I are going to be there, of course, on tomorrow's episode. We are going to bring you information. We're going to bring you some quotes, some content from training camp, let you know how it's looking, and let you know just how amazing these new guys are going to be looking in a gold Predators uniform. So be sure you're following along to the podcast. Emma, before we sign off, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work online at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. And again, want to let you know, if you want to talk past the podcast, be sure to check out the information in our bio or in the link of this description, and you can join our Locked On Predators Insider program via subtext as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with news from training camp. We'll see you then.